Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me today I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
I'm okay. It's a bit of a hectic end to the transfer window and a bit of a disappointing result to follow that. But I don't know. There's some positives to come out of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, we'll jump right into it, and you're right. It has been a pretty disappointing week. I know the last time we recorded, we were sort of preparing to say goodbye to Grzycki, and that was looking pretty likely. And I think your words or your words to some effect were basically, well, as long as we don't lose both Grzycki and Bowen, we'll be okay. But we, surely can't lose both of them. And sure enough, we lost both of them. So it was a pretty frustrating end to the window in that sense. I think it's pretty tough when you, in a way, get your hopes up that you're going to keep both players and it goes right until the last couple of days of the window and then all of a sudden we lose both of them. But I try and sort of remind myself that when we finished last season against Bristol City, we basically thought we were saying goodbye to both of them, that they'd both played their last game for us, and we got another close to 6 months out of them, and had some pretty fond memories and great wins with them in the side. So there's a sort of silver cloud to that. I do accept, obviously, in a way, it's better that they go in the summer because we have more time to replace them and all that sort of thing. But, it's all ifs and buts, and you don't really know what the situation would have been, whether we would have got the same fee for Bowen, whether the players that McGann had brought in would have gelled the same way, all that sort of thing. So it's a really tough one. I can completely understand people's frustrations about it, but what's your take on it?
Look, I get that it's frustrating and it seems to replicate that the asset stripping. I think that we've sort of titled it a few times. And from a purely from a fan's perspective, and with the McCann's talk about top six was the target for this season, and how we'd been going, it was a bit of a shock and pretty disappointing to lose them both. But when you take into consideration, I guess, not only those two players, but the other things that happen in the window for us overall, we're a club that is, in terms of finances and in terms of a football club, is trying to get themselves as a sustainable club, and they managed in that window to offload Milinkovic. Henriksen's gone on loan for the remainder of the season. Grzycki and Bowen, unfortunately, though, for the latter, but those four plus maybe I think a couple of young guys possibly left as well. But that's a huge chunk of what our wage bill was as a whole. So in one way, it's that's, I guess, the silver lining from that perspective. You look at some of the players they brought in. I know, everyone's saying, "Oh, we're selling quality and we're buying on potential, or we're not buying at championship level players, or But I don't know, from the bits and pieces I saw, I know Wilkes is. I think he's going to take a little while to get going, if he sort of does. But Madison can just seemed to come on. He had some creative spark. He seemed to do pretty well when he came on the pitch. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think there's positives and negatives about this whole situation, but we just got to get on with it now.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I don't know if you saw the Peterborough chairman came out and had some pretty choice words to say about Marcus Maddison and the manner of his departure from Peterborough, and the fact that I think we weren't even. He turned down Charlton, he turned down Birmingham, and he essentially turned us down, but then sort of got talked into it at the last minute. You always sort of expect that fans or supporters or people involved with clubs after they've lost players of a high caliber are kind of going to be saying all sorts of things to kind of cover themselves. It does sound like there's a bit of fire where there's smoke in this case, so who knows in terms of his attitude, how he'll go. I'd like to hope that he's just going to take the opportunity with both hands and really sort of try and prove himself at this level, whether it's with us or someone else next season. This is really his big chance to show that he's got it at this level. And then the other one, James Scott, young, I think he's 19 from Scotland. I tend not to be too concerned about his goal record when you look at his age. And in a lot of ways, you look at his highlights, he looks a lot like Bowen did at that age in terms of his ability to cut inside, his ability to get past, get to the byline and then cut in past players. So if he's the sort of player that we can then take to that next level and turn into the next Bowen, well, I think the fee will end up rising to $1.5 million if he's a success. I assume it's probably more around a bit under or close to $1 million as a straight up fee. But he's another one. As you say, we're sort of getting players in on potential rather than track record. I think that's a little bit of a concern for me. You sort of look at the fact that the squad is quite young, that we've recruited quite young. You do, as you sort of said last week, you do need that bit of experience. We've got Lehigh, but he's really just about it. Maybe Irvine, arguably. But look, as you say, I mean, 4 weeks ago, we were talking promotion. We were talking playoffs at least. With this squad of so-called League One players that everyone's now sort of scoffing at and saying, they're no good. So it can turn quite quickly, but you can't also say that it can't turn the other way as well. If we kind of go on a bit of a run, if Madison comes into the starting 11 and can do something, if Lopez gets his form going again, if all these guys, Wilkes starts performing as well. If all these guys start performing, all of a sudden we're sitting there saying, look at this amazing young squad we've got, and the potential's limitless with them.
Yeah, I think we also got to remember that we've got guys like Device, Stewart, Terral to come back into this team on their return from injury. So there's still a lot of quality that's just on the pine at the moment. So I don't know. I think with what they said the original offer for that young striker was like they pretty much doubled it to get him. So obviously someone's seen something pretty significant in him that they're willing to make such a big jump to grab him. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I think the other thing, I mean, we haven't really talked about the Brentford game yet, but just that it's sort of related is in regards to that loss and how everyone's now perceiving, us as almost a club in turmoil and on the decline. But that was a very good side that we played on the weekend, so that's the it's always disappointing to lose by such a large margin. But I think like they looked very good, and I would be surprised if they're not kicking on and pushing for those automatic spots.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Brentford game in a little bit more detail in a second. Last question around the transfers. Were you a little bit surprised that Bowen ended up at West Ham? I really thought that he probably would have gone to a slightly higher club. I guess it's a risk that I kind of find it interesting if he's gone to a club that's in a relegation battle. If he finds himself back in the Championship in 6 months, I'm sure it would feel to some extent like a pretty wasted move. But, maybe at the end of the day, they were the only ones with a solid offer and he saw them as his big opportunity.
Yeah, I think, January's January. And especially like when we get to this time of year, and it's normally the sort of clubs that are willing to take that punt on Bowen at that time of year are those clubs who are sort of in that closer to that fight. They're trying to find something different to sort of kick on with that, or you're like the clubs on the cusp of Champions League. And as much as I think he will end up at a club like that, I don't know if that would be one. I don't know if it'd be the best move for him right now, because I think he'd spend a lot more time watching them playing.
Yep.
But also, I don't think that they would see him as someone who's only ever succeeded in the Championship as a player that's going to help them kick on to reach that fourth or fifth spot in the Premier League. So I think it just sort of came down to just the time, it being January window and the clubs that I guess were willing to pay what the club was asking.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we will talk about that Brentford game now, not for too long, because it was a pretty unhappy sort of affair. I guess, as you say, I think the first thing that needs to be said is that it's absolutely a credit to a fantastic Brentford side, and they are certainly a side that will be there or thereabouts at the end of the season. And it is also worth pointing out that we did lose to them by the exact same scoreline last season with Bowen and Grzycki in the side. What I find so interesting, though, is the fact that we've lost two of our more attacking players, and yet that's somehow being drawn a link to the manner of the result when believe that there might have been a bit of a deflation in the dressing room, that people might have been pretty disappointed that the owners and the people above us are sort of saying that the season's over, so why should we try? But as professionals, they've got to just put their heads down and put the effort in. And it was a really disappointing display in a lot of ways. I do sort of agree with the comment that there was effort there to an extent, that a lot of the players seemed to be trying. They just weren't organised enough, or there wasn't enough direction on how to play that could get us sort of more focused. And I hate to make him a scapegoat, but I was really amazed that Kingsley was listed as one of the best by a lot of people, because time and time again when he starts games, you just have to look at the fact that the amount of space that he leaves on his side, because he tucks in so far and gives wingers so much space on that right wing for them, it just makes it so difficult for us to defend chances when they have that much time and space. And it's almost every display that I see where he's on the side where that sort of thing happens. And I mean, sure, maybe he's made a few decent clearances, maybe he's set up a few decent plays, but it's just inexcusable. And I don't know if he's being directed to do that. I don't see that with Fleming or Elder when they're in the side to that extent. And it leaves us so vulnerable, and was a clear part of the reason that we conceded so many goals.
I tend to share your sentiments on Kingsley. It seems like it would be hard to argue that that's a tactical decision, because you don't see Lehigh doing that from on the right side of the defence. He never really seemed. I just feel, I don't know. I think we both tend to agree that when Elder is there, we seem much more settled and much more comfortable defending that left side of the field. But I think I thought the midfield, was a bit ineffective.
I've been really disappointed in Kane, I've got to say. I know he started on the bench, I think, but I mean, maybe he's another one that I'm sort of scapegoating to an extent, but he's just not really offered a whole lot when he's been playing.
I tend to agree with that. He's sort of bits and pieces, a nice touch here and there, or a nice pass, but in terms of a 45 or a 90-minute performance, it's not consistent across the whole board. He's coming in and out of matches, I don't know, but I think, as well as it was one of those where all week, they obviously would have been preparing for that game, and they're doing their analysis, and they would have been, going, oh, well, we can exploit, Camille and Jad, we can exploit them here and here and here. And then comes, the day before the game, and now they're gone, they're out of the picture. And I'm sure there would have been contingencies in place for that, but I think just with how that all unfolded and so quickly over those last couple of days of the window, that I think, I would have had to have unsettled the team a little bit. But I think what else happened? I think Magenta started again.
Yeah, and I think we're both in agreement on that one as well.
Just blows my mind. It just doesn't do anything for me. Yeah. And anyway, but
I think Eves offers and look, you can say all you want about his inability to score a whole heap of goals for us, but I think Eves offers so much more around the pitch than Magennis. I don't think Magennis even was involved in the play much at all. From memory, whereas at least with Eves, you've got someone who can hold the ball up really well. He can draw his teammates into the game. He can, if you want to get a clearance out of defence to sort of alleviate pressure, and he brings the ball down, he can then hold it up until Wilkes and whoever's on the other wing, whether it's Lewis Potter or whoever, can run into space. And that's actually somebody else to mention as having actually a really good game, I thought, was Lewis Potter. Was just about man of the match for me. I think I probably would have given it to Tafazoli, ironically, in a 5-1 defeat. But I thought Lewis Potter was fantastic, and he created as many chances as he could from that left wing, and he really took his chance with both hands. And I think he played the full 90 minutes as well, which was great to see. So I hopefully see a lot more of him starting a few games in the future.
Yeah, I think he was really good. He was really impressive for for considering he's no, what's he, 18
Yeah,
maybe?
I think he's 18 or
You know,
19. Yeah,
yeah. So like for a young guy with not a great deal of experience, he's come on a few times at the back towards the end of games. Has started, played a couple of cup games and that, but in terms of that senior experience and not a great deal of experience. So to come in and play from the get go and play pretty well. I thought few times he sort of got his inexperience got exposed, but I think overall he put in a really good account of himself. Tafazoli, I think you mentioned I've been actually really impressed with how well he's come in and for the most part he's able he's comfortable on the ball and playing the ball out from the back really well.
mm.
Apart from that,
Yeah.
which has now gone down as an own goal. I was so
I was
disappointed
I was surprised at that because I actually thought
because
it
it
was on
didn't.
target.
Yeah, I didn't think it didn't look like it actually took that big of a
Yeah, I
touch
thought it just went straight
off
through his
Raya,
legs.
but maybe who knows? But that's what they've decided. But
Yeah.
apart from that, which ended up in a goal anyway, I thought he's been really good. I think he was actually at fault for one or two of the goals, but in saying that, he was responsible for cutting down a heap of other chances as well. So um, he's been, and this is the same thing. You're saying like this is League One players who, we're buying League One players and not buying on experience and quality. We're buying potential. Well, this guy, I mean, he's 27. He's one of the older players in the
Yeah.
team, but he's only ever played League One, and he's come in and stepped in the championship. So there's no reason that the other guys that we have brought up can't replicate that. I think Madison, I sort of mentioned it before. I thought when he came on, I thought he was really good on that right hand side. I think I mentioned to you privately that there was moments that I was reminded of
Mm.
Bowen, when he was cutting inside along the edge of the box and having shots. So I think there's enough talent and spark creatively there to that once he starts starting games and playing for longer periods, that I think he will be an exciting prospect for us. Hopefully he has a successful 6 months and then he signs a longer contract and we can keep him for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll talk now about that Reading game coming up, and I guess the way to transition into that is perhaps to talk about our potential lineup for that game, because I think for the first time in a while, it's a much more open-ended question to figure out what our 11 would be, and I think it would be really interesting if we could see Maddison starting on one wing, potentially, I guess maybe Wilkes on the other, and then hell, you could even have Lewis Potter up top, but failing that, you could have Lewis Potter on one wing, Madison through the middle perhaps, and Wilkes on the other. And of course, we've still got Scott as well, who'd be really interesting to see if we could get a look at him. I think he's going to be more of a player coming off the bench. He's still quite young, getting used to the game. I guess the main question is what to do with that central midfield, because Honeyman's another one that I just really am a bit worried by at the moment. I just don't think he's offering a whole lot at all, really. But I just don't know what the alternative is. I don't know when Stewart's not back for a little while, whether we do an Irvine, Lopez and Kane midfield three, I guess. Maybe Batty. I mean, Batty hasn't really had much of a look in recently, but I'd love to see him get a game as well. But it's the defence that's the worry as well, but maybe if we can sort out the midfield, it'll help the defence out a little bit.
Yeah, I think Samuelson should be good for Reading. I think.
Okay. Yep.
I thought he was only out with something minor. I think that's what I read last time I read anything, that he would be good for this coming match, which gives you another option. He's been quite tidy on the ball. At the top of that midfield might go quite well.
Yeah, and he'd be a good one with he seems to have similar sort of attributes to Madison, where they could almost rotate, where one's on the wing, one's at that sort of attacking midfield spot, and even Lewis Potter. Really, you could have a bit of a fluidity across those three.
Yeah, well, that's probably not about it when you mention that fluidity, because when we're still talking, still talking about Grzycki and Bowen, even though they're not here anymore. But when they were getting involved with each other and roaming and the floating around at that front three and not necessarily being stuck to the left and right wing is when we seem to have the most success. We seem Bowen was scoring a lot more when he was combining with Grzycki.
Yep.
So I think, being able to get all those, because, getting all our attacking players combining and working together is going to be the key to us starting to score more goals, because it's now been, what would it be about 5 hours or something since we've actually scored a league goal that hasn't been an own goal.
I think we've only scored one goal this year, which was Bowen.
Sheffield Wednesday, I think.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit of well, I guess also Grzycki in the cup, but one league goal, yeah.
Yeah.
And even that Grzycki goal, I'd say, was pretty arguably an own goal.
So, there's the attack was already slowing down because there's 3 or 4 games where Grzycki and Bowen were there and we weren't scoring and creating a lot. So that's the fact that we didn't do a lot on the weekend is not indicative of them not being there. It's just we were on a bit of a offensive decline anyway. Hopefully, some fresh blood will spark things along again. Hopefully we don't start with Magennis again. That's my one request. Not start with Magennis up top.
We surely have enough attacking options now that we can come up with another formation that doesn't involve him.
Surely we've got James Scott, we've got Bullock, we've got Eves, we've got so we seem now all of a sudden we have an abundance of strikers. Surely McCann can come up with something else to do with that, but I think I think the back line, unless Device or Elder was fit again, I think it'd stay the same. I can't see any reason why he would have put Kingsley in for that.
Pennington's back, because it'd be interesting if we could at least put Pennington at right back and Lee High at left back. That'd be nice.
That's probably, I guess that would be the only other thing that would challenge what I was about to say. Is if Pennington was back. I was going to say I can't see any reason why he would have put Kingsley in and then just take him out to put like Fleming or someone in. But if it was Pennington, then I could see that switch across from Lehigh and that. But I think the midfield I think at the moment is as our main problem. We're letting opposition teams just roll through there far too easily, and we're having to face so many attacking opportunities, and the more of those we have to face, the more likely we are to then concede. So I think just solidifying that midfield, and I think hopefully when Stewart's back he can just continue the form that he was in when he left, because he was outstanding at the start of the season. So but I think we're just sort of waiting for we're sort of stuck in a bit of waiting for turns from injuries at the moment to really bring this squad back towards full strength and full fitness.
Well, it's interesting because Reading, who for most of the season have been so far behind us and have really been battling a relegation fight, are now only 1 point behind us, which I guess does have us sort of looking over our shoulders. I think the talk of a relegation fight's probably a little bit overblown in the local media. I do think it's a bit doomsday scenario, but I just can't imagine. I think the last season, the third bottom team was relegated on 50 points, and we're already at 49 points, I think. So, it would have to take some sort of catastrophic collapse and the sides below us to start picking up a ridiculous amount of points. But Reading have they have 3 draws in their last 5, so they've only had 2 losses in the last 5. We've had 4 losses. I think I saw somewhere that our longest losing streak in our history was 5 losses. I could be wrong, because that sounds not that many for our longest ever losing streak, but I think it could be something like that, or maybe it's home losses. I'm not sure, but we are sort of getting into uncharted territory here, and we do need to sort of turn a corner at some point. So what do you see the outcome being of this game, and what's your score prediction for this game?
It's a tough one when you consider what's happened and it's really hard to sort of give a gauge, but I think I'd be very surprised if we didn't produce some sort of response from a 5-1 loss. It's not very often, in my experience, that that you follow up a 5-1 loss with another really poor performance. It'll be about trying to restore some pride from the players, and show that they deserve to wear that jersey. So I think that they'll be up for the fight this weekend, but I don't think they might. I'm not expecting more than a point actually out of the game, to be honest. Probably like a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I probably agree with you there. I think it'll be a draw. It'll be great if we could get the win, but I just think with the form we're in, as we said, we've scored 1 goal ourselves for the year, so it's even if we can score a couple of goals, 2-2 draw would be quite nice for me, I think. But thank you for joining me, Dan. It's been a late one, but we've gotten through most of the big topics from the last week. There's always a lot to say on City, especially when there's a transfer window closing. I think these days, I think it's 7 or 8 transfer deadlines in a row that we've signed or sold players on the final day of the window. So always news to talk about. But thank you for joining me.
That's all right. I just wanted to. I just can't. What was the? I just saw today the academy coach.
Oh yes.
Chris Blakeston. I just wanted to
yes.
If anyone's listening, but from us, I suppose, just thoughts and prayers for the family of Chris Blakeston. I saw some of the players come out. I think Keane Lewis Potter said he was the guy who brought him to the club. So a bit of a loss. I think it was cancer related and only aged 40, so quite young and quite sad.
Yeah, really sad news, and it's one of those ones where you see so many players with such positive, overwhelmingly positive sort of things to say about him. So he clearly touched a lot of players' hearts and really influenced a lot of those younger guys coming through the academy and played a big role in. I mean, you look at the state our academy is in now after what it was maybe 5-6 years ago, and no doubt he played a big part in that. And so yeah, absolutely, I echo your thoughts. Thoughts and prayers to his family and loved ones, and condolences to everyone impacted by a pretty tragic bit of news there. But yeah, so thank you for joining me for this one, Dan.
Yeah, that's all right.
And no worries. Thank you everyone for listening in for this week's episode of The Tigers Down Under. Hopefully we can get the 3 points, bounce back to winning ways, and set ourselves up for at least a top half finish to this season. But until next time, come on City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
City's on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're right.